significant digits, or Sig Figs for short. How do you compare numbers, values of different levels of accuracy? How accurate can your answer be before the rest of it is just nonsense? So I started out with a fairly rhetorical question. What's the difference between $600 and $599.87? Besides the obvious 13 cents, we would say one of those numbers, the second one, is much more precise than the other one. Scientifically, we say that one has more significant, relevant, accurate digits than the other. Sig Fig rules are really tough to explain in English. It is much, much easier to explain Sig Fig rules with a bunch of examples. So I'm going to start out by saying 600 has, we're going to come back to that. Put your pencils down, look up. And then we're going to see if this program, oh, it did open. There we go. 3 has 1 Sig Fig. 16 has 2 Sig Figs. 412, 3 Sig Figs. 412.5, 4 Sig Figs. 412.50, 5 Sig Figs. Really? Yeah. What was 3? 1 Sig Fig. 30. 1 Sig Fig. 300. 1 Sig Fig. 'Whatever that is. 1 Sig Fig. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Sig Figs. So let's try and go systematically. Let's go numbers bigger than 1, non-decimal numbers. How many Sig Figs? 2. How many Sig Figs? 3. How many Sig Figs? 2. So zeros count when they're in between 2 other non-zero digits, but they don't count, Joel, if they're at the end acting like placeholders. All this is doing is telling you how far to move the 3 over. It's not actually telling you that these numbers were zeros. We don't know that. They're guesses. We just know that it was 3 something. Okay? So, how many Sig Figs? 2. How many Sig Figs? 3. How many Sig Figs? 3. The rule in measurement is whatever you do as your final digit is a guess. So really what we're saying, the answer was 430, something close to a 4, but might not have been a 4, and that's where our significant figures ends. How many Sig Figs? 1. What if, and what you're saying by this, by the way, is you only measured to the 10. You know it's 10 something. Could be 11, could be 12. I just know that that digit, that is accurate. What if you actually measured to here? What if you wanted this to be 2 Sig Figs? What if you want to show to somebody, hey, I measured this accurately? You put a decimal there, and now you're saying that 0 isn't there as a fluke. I put it there on purpose. I measured with my ruler to 2 Sig Figs, and it just happened that that last digit was a 0. What about for decimals? 1 Sig Fig. 1 Sig Fig. Emily. 2. Not 2. That's 3. And the argument, Emma, is why on earth would I have stuck that 0 there? Oh, I must have actually measured to this level of accuracy, and it just so happened that the number that appeared on my measuring device was a 0, where with this number, I only measured to that level of accuracy, and it was a 1, and I quit there. I don't have enough accuracy to go beyond there, but with this 0, I must have had enough accuracy to go 1 decimal place further, and it just so happened when I did that, my ruler or whatever device I was using was sitting right on a 0. Hard to explain in English. Here's how you explain in English. Pick your pencils up. First of all, 600, how many sig figs? 1. 599.87, how many sig figs? 5. So here's the rules. Any non-zero digit counts. 456, how many sig figs? 3. 0.9723, how many sig figs? 4. Zeros to the left is that way, zeros to the left of a decimal count. So 690, since there is a decimal there, how many sig figs? Not 2, 3. 690, no decimal? Yeah, I have an answer. Did you hear her? She's smart. She said, Mr. Dewick, if 0 is to the left of a decimal count, how come I didn't count that 0 there as a sig fig? Because actually, you'll almost always see that I write it this way. For that reason. That's the only time that I don't count a 0. We put the 0 there not as a measurement, but just so you don't miss the decimal point, because we don't begin numbers with zeros. If you see a number starting with a 0, at least in North America, at least in Canada, it almost always means right after the 0 is a decimal. Make sure you don't miss that. Is that an answer? That's a great question. You're the first person to ask me that. I like you. I tell you, you better pull your socks up and get your game going here, because she's leaving you in the dust. 690, no decimal. How many sig figs? Not 3. 2. Next rule. Zeros to the right is this way, of a decimal are tricky. If there are non-zero numbers to the left of a 0, they count. Otherwise, we ignore them. What? Again, it's easier to do some examples. So first of all, I'll add one here. 67, how many sig figs? 2. 67.00, our argument here is, why on earth would I have written those 2 zeros after the decimal? They have no earthly use unless, Oliver, I measured to that level of accuracy, and it just so happened the measuring device was sitting on a 00 when I did that. So how many sig figs is that one? It's 4. How many sig figs is this next one? 6. How many sig figs is this next one? Not 5. 2. How many sig figs? 3. How many sig figs? This is 4. So the first thing you have to be able to do, Misha, is you have to be able to figure out how many sig figs you have in a number. That's why we spent so much time practicing that. And after that, there are 2 rules. There's one rule for multiplying and dividing, because multiplying and division are complementary. They're the same mathematical operation, but in reverse. They're inverses of each other. And there's another rule for adding and subtracting. Multiplying and dividing is the easy rule. Adding and subtracting is the rule where until you get good, you might need to rewrite every question to make it look a certain way. And then I'll show you, after we've done a few of the rewrites, how it is possible to track it all in your head. And if you want to do it that way in your homework, go ahead. On a test, I would still probably write it out to be careful and not make a dumb mistake. So how do you multiply and divide with sig figs? This is formally known as rounding off. How do you do this? The first thing you do is you don't do any rounding off before you go to your calculator. So get your calculators out, and we're going to type in 6.74 times 2.1230 zeros and a 2 and hit equals. Don't round off ahead of time. And you should all have 13.481348, and I think it stops there. I don't think it's a repeating decimal or anything. Y'all got that? Okay. How many Sig Figs? This first one number here, 6.74. How many Sig Figs? Write a little tiny 3 above it or below it. Little tiny 3. How many Sig Figs is the 2.0002? 5. Write a little tiny 5 right there. In your homework, Jacqueline, if you want to skip this step and you get good enough that you can just track this in your head, great. But Jacqueline, what 2 numbers did I write in red? What's the smallest one? I'm going to round to 3 Sig Figs. You go to the smallest number of Sig Figs in the data that you're given. How's that going to work? You ready? Here's my answer. Look up, look up, look up, look up. 1 Sig Fig, 2 Sig Figs, 3 Sig Figs. I'm going to round off to there. Is that 4 going to stay a 4 or is it going to become a 5? What's next to it? An 8. So it's going to become a 5 instead of staying a 4. 13.5. That's as accurate as you can be if you measured those 2 values to those levels of precision and then you wanted to combine them. The best you can do here, if you're multiplying, 3 Sig Figs. B. Ready for hashtag nerd trivia? What mathematical operation does a fraction bar represent? Divided by? The division symbol is a fraction bar, and you just say there's something on the top and something on the bottom, and you represent the something on the top and bottom. Mateo just had his mind blown. He just, oh yeah! That's why it's a little horizontal line and a dot on the top and the dot on the bottom. It's an image of a generic fraction, because fractions mean divide. You guys know that? Hashtag, hashtag nerd trivia. There you go. You'll have plenty of that this year, if nothing else. Nothing. I won't test you on that, but, you know. So, Cole, do we round off before or after? So type it in exactly as written. 6.4 divided by 9.088. I missed the decimal. I had 64. That's no good. One of the advantages, I've got on my calculator rant, the ability to backspace and edit sure is nice, especially because I suck at typing. You get 0.7042255. No, you don't. Ready? Cole, my friend. 6.4. How many Sig Figs? Write a little tiny 2 right there. 9.088. How many Sig Figs? What's the smallest number that we've just written? I'm going to go to 2 Sig Figs. The little chant I do to myself, 2 Sig Figs, 4 Sig Figs, I'm going to round to 2 Sig Figs, the smallest number. So it's going to look like this. There's the 7. The 0 is sitting in the second Sig Fig. Is the 0 going to stay a 0 or become a 1? And now you're knowing why sometimes we do have to put a 0 there. That's not a placeholder. I was that accurate. That's 2 Sig Figs. Wow, that was no good. It all vanished. Come on, calculator. There we go. So, rule 1, never round off until all your calculations are finished. Rule 2, round off to the smallest number of Sig Figs represented. I've given you example 1, example 2, example 3, example 4, 4 questions that are almost identical. Try these on your own. I'll do them up here. Do your Sig Fig rounding and see if we get exactly the same answer. Make sure you sign up properly, kiddo. Yep, thank you. Yo. What kind do you have? That one? It's the S to D button right above your 9, I think? Or right around that area. That stands for standard to decimal display. Come on, from across the room, I'm enough of a calculator. That was pretty good. Nothing? Really? Nothing. Wow, people. 13.567 times 5. That's what I got. When you're done, look up and see if we match. I think I'm right. Although someone interrupted me in the middle of my thought process to ask how to threw me off my game. Just saying. Mateo, is that okay? Yeah? So again, Brian, here's my thinking. Are you in Cam? Yeah. Okay. 5 sig figs, 3 sig figs, I'm in around to 3 sig figs. 5 sig figs, 2 sig figs, I'm in around to 2 sig figs. 5 sig figs, 2 sig figs, I'm in around to 2 sig figs. 5 sig figs, 1 sig fig? Well, I'm going to round to 1 sig fig, which means all I can go with is the first digit. I think it was a 6, but there was an 8 next to it, so it becomes a 7, and then I stick a 0 as a placeholder. Not as a sig fig. Is that correct? Yeah? Multiplying and dividing is the easier of the 2 sig fig rules, sadly. Adding and subtracting sucks. Okay? Until you get good. And you might get good, and if you do and you're getting the right answer, I'm fine. Until you get good, I strongly encourage you to rewrite any addition or subtraction question vertically. In other words, I deliberately gave you, oh, I didn't give you more. I'll give you some more here to practice. So here's how it works. I want to add 4.567 plus 9.0. Here's the most common mistake. Rihanna, kids go, oh, 4 sig figs, 2 sig figs. Has nothing to do with the number of sig figs in the question. Nothing. I might end up with 3 sig figs in my final answer. I might end up with 1 sig fig. I might end up with 4. I might end up with 2. I don't know. Instead, if you write them vertically so that the decimal places line up, and then I fill in any missing numbers. Do you notice how this goes to 3 decimal places? How many decimal places does this go to? Just 1. Do me a favor with your pencil. Put a little question mark underneath the 6, a little question mark underneath the 7. I am going to round off in the first column where there are no question marks. Column, am I going to round off before I go to my calculator? So I'm going to go to my calculator. 4.567 divided plus 9.0. I probably didn't need to type the 0, but had there been a digit there, I still would anyways. I get this. I don't care how many sig figs there are. Instead, Oliver, this first column, 1 decimal place, that's what I'm going to round off to. I'm going to round off right to there. 1 decimal place. Is that 5 going to stay a 5 or become a 6? Look at the next one over. Final answer is going to be 13.6, which you'll notice, how many sig figs is my final answer? Which doesn't show up anywhere in the original question. Okay, so it's nothing to do with counting. Don't even waste your time. So rewrite the numbers vertically. Line up the decimal places. Ask yourself, where is the first spot where you're missing a decimal? You can go to the column right before that, the last column where you know everything. Let me do another one here. Example 1. Suppose they asked you to add 23.681 plus 4.73, take away 12.8282. until I get good, I'm going to rewrite it vertically, lining up the decimal points. So it's going to look like this. 23.681 plus 4.73 take away 12.8282. I fill in any missing stuff. Looks like I'm missing something right there, which means the last column that I know every number is that one. I'm going to round off to that decimal place, to 2 decimal places. I don't care about Sig Figs, Emily. It's going to be to 2 decimal places. Am I going to round off before I start, Cole? So I'm going to go 23.681 minus 4. Minus Mr. Dewick. Good thing you have a calculator that lets you backspace and edit. Plus 4.73. Now take away 12.8282. Answer. Nothing to do with 5 sig figs or 3 sig figs or 6 sig figs. It's going to be to the second decimal place, the last spot where I know everything. It's going to round off right to there. Is the 8 going to stay an 8 or become a 9? 8. So 15.58. Final answer is going to be 15.58, which happens to be the 4 sig figs, which didn't show up anywhere in my original question. You okay with that, Mike? Mr. Dewick? What, Mike? You said it was possible to do these in your head. I'll show you how you can add and subtract without rewriting, and I'll leave it up to you whether you want to try doing it that way or not. So you can go a little, we'll do another one here. Example 2. $126.519 plus 83.6478 plus 12.2. If you want the rule for adding or subtracting, look up Dylan, my friend, before you go to your calculator. Mike, how many, not sig figs, how many decimal places does this first number go to? 3. Next one? 4. Next one? 1. I'm going to round to the smallest number of decimal places that you just said. Not sig figs. I'll be able to go to 1 decimal place because I'll have something in that column for everything. But if I go to 2, I'll be putting a red question mark right there. Don't know that. So what decimal place did you say? Are we going to round to? Remember that? Now go to our calculator, type this in. You said 1 decimal place? Yeah. So that 3, is it going to stay a 3 or become a 4? I guess, am I right? Is it 222.3668? Yes, okay. So there's the 3. It's going to stay a 3 or become a 4? 4. Got it right? Because 5 or higher next to it. You remember your rounding off rules? 222.4. So, Mateo, can you do this without rewriting? It can't be done. I usually on a test take the time to rewrite it just so I don't make a dumb mistake. Last one. $500 plus 12.6565. If you wrote this vertically, you would have 500 plus 12.6565. If you go to calculator, you get that. What do I round to? Well, you don't actually know both numbers in this column because these two zeros here are not significant figures. So you ready, Mateo? I'm going to read this to you in English. You ready? How much money do you have? I got about 500 bucks. I've just given you $12.65. How much money do you have? About 500 bucks. I'm really, because that first number, it's around 500, and saying, well, now you're accurate by 12 more. You can't be that accurate. It's still around 500. If they had put a decimal point right there, then they would be saying that that zero and that zero were accurate. And then you could actually go all the way up to the decimal point. But this one, all we can say is it's about 500. That's an obscure, weird one that I'm not even sure shows up in the homework. So if you're worried, we need to practice this. So summary, rule for multiplication and division, the least number of sig figs. Rule for addition and subtraction, the fewest number of decimal places that you know everything for. Homework. Here you go. And I think this time I did attach the answers, I think. I did these answers. Oh, this also explains how I was rounding off the scientific notation sheet that you were working on last day. I, without even thinking about it, was doing everything accurately to the right number of sig figs. That's why your answer might not match my answer. If you haven't finished the scientific notation sheet, you want to finish that. Finish this. You'll probably get it all done in class. I have a short, nerdy video to show you later on.